Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's Carole Baskin from Big Cat Rescue, and you are listening to Inside the War Room.
Welcome to another edition of Inside the War Room. Ryan Ray here, as always. Today, it's kind of a follow-up, if you will, to the Carole Baskin interview, because oddly enough, Ben Samuels was the guest scheduled after her, but he picked it before her. So I sent out a link, people pick the times, and it's just kind of the luck of the draw, if you will, more or less is how it works. And Ben had picked the day after Carole, and then had picked that day, and then Carole picked her day before. So it just kind of worked out the way. Anyways, so Ben Samuels is our guest today. We'll link to all of Ben's stuff in the show notes. A couple of things that have happened since the Carole Baskin interview, which it feels like was an eternity ago. It was only 4 or 5 days. So I can say, first off, thank you to everyone who's reached out. Second off, if you listen to this podcast, go check our YouTube channel, because we have a YouTube channel. We're really trying to grow it. We've never really pushed it, so we're pushing that hard now. Please, please, please go subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, consider subscribing or giving a thumbs up. We're trying to grow our YouTube channel for a lot of reasons, but we need your help with that. If you're watching, this is a podcast, so go type in Inside the War Room wherever you're watching, watching YouTube, and go down the podcast. Okay. The other thing is, I've got a lot of feedback on this interview about Carole Baskin. Most of it's been great, fantastic, good stuff. Change your perspective. So thank you for that. But some people have criticized, which is fine. I'm fine with that, saying that maybe Carole was misrepresenting her position or whatever. The purpose of this show is to bring on guests to have conversations, right? It's not my job to parse through everything they say. I'll push back here and there if I find something that I'm not sure about. But by and large, I want to hear what they have to say. That's why I'm bringing them on. They're my guest to listen to. So, if you think that Carole did this, that, and other, so be it. Leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We are trying to have more conversation here, not less. So this show, what you're seeing or listening to, is phase one in that conversation, right? So phase two is with you, the listener. And as this show grows, we'll have more ways to connect with the listener directly. So please subscribe, share, and all that. We'd love it. Okay. Now to our recommendations. Up off the mic there, that might have been loud. First, Howlerhead Whiskey. Thank you guys for producing this product. Not a sponsor. If you want a sponsor, let me know. Howlerhead Whiskey. I've been seeing their advertisements everywhere. They got some pretty cool shirts, but I thought, I'm going to give this a shot. It's Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey with a natural banana flavor. Tried some yesterday, and it was pretty good. Pretty good. So Howlerhead Whiskey is my recommendation for this podcast, and our sponsor is Acorns. Okay, so I've had Acorns for over a year now, a year and a half, time plus, and I use it for this, to round up the extra cents on my transactions for my debit cards, right? So if I spend, $6.25, then that 75 cents gets rounded up and invested. Now, before you say, well, Ryan, you'd be better investing that. Okay, yeah, I get it. It'd be better to invest that 75 cents somewhere else. The problem is I won't. I won't invest the 75 cents somewhere else. And if I'm going to dollar cost average or invest something like that, then the roundups aren't enough to actually impact me, right? So it's not as if by investing this 75 cents with Acorns, I'm losing my ability to invest it somewhere else. In a perfect world, I do it 100% effective. I don't live in a perfect world. So Acorns. So right now, it's only for a limited time. If you sign up, you get $5 for free. And if you get 5 of your friends to sign up, you can get $1,000 from Acorns dropped into your investment account. So use the link below, sign up, consider sharing it with your friends. Once you make a deposit and get everything set up, then you can be eligible for your $1,000 as well in your investment account. You better hurry. It's a limited time offer. So check out Acorns. With that being said, Ben Samuels is a good buddy of mine, and it's good to keep him on the podcast. Without further ado, here he is. Benson, good to have you on the show, buddy. How you doing?
Doing well, doing well. This is the different seat. I get to be the guest. You said off air in the little preliminary that you had to be nice to me today. I'm going to test that out. We're going to see. How are you doing?
Was that recorded or? did you have like a witness to that, or?
This isn't Don't Let the Facts. Let's not. Let's not.
Good, man. Good. So it was funny because a little behind the scenes here. We schedule our guests, except for rare occasions. We send a link and they pick their own time. So you picked this time back a month ago, I think. And then the Carole Baskin podcast, we recorded it yesterday. This will come out a few days after. So we recorded it yesterday afternoon, and this is the following morning. So it's kind of funny how all that worked out. You were saying before you're still in a high, man. It was crazy. Like, it wasn't crazy as in Joe Exotic, the world melted down crazy. It was just crazy to be doing that, it felt like.
Yeah, it was very kind of otherworldly. Yeah, to just be in that conversation and have her on as a guest, like we talked about a little bit in the post show. She was a great guest. Thought she was super informative, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I was. I mean, Ryan, was like, what percentage chance was there after yesterday that you were just gonna drop the mic, sign off, and like we weren't even gonna record today? I mean, that had to be somewhere on the docket.
If it would have been anyone else but you, I would have canceled it.
I don't know how to take that. I'm going to take that as a compliment. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I do have a question about the Carole thing. So I kind of knew what to expect from her a little bit. And she was 100 times better than even I expected. But I knew she was going to be a good guest. I've heard her before outside Tiger King. For you, I don't know if you've heard her or not. How much does it concern you watching, quote, documentaries now that maybe what you're being led to believe isn't what you're seeing? So our interview, to be clear, is unedited. We may have talked to her 2 minutes before the show went live yesterday in the kind of green room, just saying, hey, good to have you. Any questions? This is what we would talk about, which is generally the Tiger stuff and Tiger King. And then we gripped it and ripped it. There was no script, nothing. She never asked for anything. So what you saw yesterday was raw, at least from our perspective. She's obviously talked about this stuff, quite frankly. But how much does it concern you that maybe now you knew Tiger King was we all kind of know it's something's wrong there with what's going on. But I expect Joe Exotic, that's who he is, and so you kind of expect all the other characters to kind of be like that. And then you meet Carole, you're like, whoa, this is not the same person they made her out to be on the documentary. Does it worry you now, kind of watching documentaries, that maybe you're being misled?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if yesterday was sort of the seminal moment, but yeah, I think over the years, for years now, the documentary space has been full of. The people making the documentaries have a very, very clear political or knowledge-based leaning in the industry. Like they're clearly trying to put out a message rather than present facts on both sides and let the audience sort of make their own determination and take liberty to make those decisions for themselves about what they think and how they think the issue should be addressed. You talk about like Seaspiracy, Blackfish, all the other like documentaries. Those are all very, very one-sided. Tiger King, I think is in a different category from the sense that it never really even purported to be a documentary, right? I mean, it was sort of supposed to be a sensationalized account of this character, this larger than life character, Joe Exotic. And so under that, through that prism, it wasn't as though I don't necessarily think that the show even would purport to have been sort of a information and fact-based series. I think it was more about the sensationalism, and it's unfortunate because I think one of the things that Carole was talking about yesterday is that she was sold sort of the project as very much the opposite, was sold very much like a documentary, this is going to be good for the cats, this is going to be good for the industry type of publication or type of series, and the production ended up being vastly different.
Yeah, you might be right. It might not be. I'm trying to see what Netflix actually has it listed under, and I can't. I see limited series right now. It might not be considered pure documentary, but it also doesn't have the reality TV feel, right? It has the documentary feel, and so that kind of makes it there. And a lot of the stuff that they do show is, on some level true. Yeah, I think you talk about the documentary space. She touched on the sum. It's probably hard to sell things because traditional media is sensationalized. Like that's what they do. That's what they sell. But you look at the most popular podcast in the world, Joe Rogan. That's not what he sells. So there is a forum for just average conversations that can be loud or low or energetic or laughing or serious or somber. But the traditional media doesn't know how to market that space yet. I think that's the struggle. So in a theoretical world, YouTube could have taken whatever that Carole thought it was going to be and probably promoted that in a way that would have got the traction, and they could have got the ad revenue and probably made their money back, whatever. But because they had to go to Netflix or CNN or whomever, you have to pitch it a certain way because those guys, I don't think they actually know how to just present just normal conversation.
Right. The news and documentary space, these days sort of, or the blend between the two is very sensational focused and what's sort of going to get eyeballs, and is not necessarily nuance focused or, again, fact based. And, I think it's a fascinating dichotomy in a way where, Joe Rogan's podcast, to your point, is wildly successful, wildly popular, but the episodes are 2-3 hours long. In order to really, that's an investment that most people are not going to make. I mean, most people ingest their news, in TikTok length formats, right? 30-second to 2-minute, clips, YouTube, live stream, things of that nature. Again, very short clips. And so I think I think I guess what I'm saying is that part of the frustration is that the media is not, arguably not focused on even presenting the facts. Like they are a money machine, and the way they make money is eyeballs. And the way you get eyeballs is to create controversy, right? It's not even necessarily to be a bastion of truth or journalism or what have you.
And that's what's so frustrating, because there's so many ways now to monetize content if you have the ability to distribute it. So I just had on the Sandusky guy, John Ziegler, and we talked about this offline. So he's got 50 plus hours of podcasts going through the Sandusky stuff. And I think he makes a clear case for a retrial for Sandusky. You listen to the podcast to hear about that. I'm not sure if Sandusky's innocent or not. And that's because for the 50 plus hours, it's his side of the story, right? He's presenting facts and evidence. There's no real back and forth. What would be fascinating is to hear 50 hours of him on the pro Sandusky side and someone on the anti Sandusky side going through the evidence, talking to experts, bringing on people, lawyers breaking this down. They're in, if you go look at the amount of reviews for his podcast, how many downloads it's got, it seems to have done pretty well based upon the reviews, the total reviews. Speaking of which, go download this podcast, give it a 5-star review or a thumbs up on YouTube. Shameless plug there. But if you go look at it, I think there's a lot more capacity for that today, because it's not 1992 where you turn on at 5 and you got to watch the news then, or you miss it until 6 and then 10. You can consume it at your own pace, which means we can put out more long form content, or at least record content long form and then release it in parts. You could do that. You have all kinds of options. And so I don't understand why traditional media can't do that better. You would think they would learn, but they don't learn. It makes me wonder if they have ulterior motives, if they don't understand how this space works. And listen, I'm not Joe Rogan, so I'm not like I've got it figured out. But you can look at Joe Rogan; he crushes all the mainstream media. He crushes them.
But think about the amount of time it would take to create a 50-hour, you're talking for 50 hours on a podcast. Think how long it would take. Think how long it would take to create that in terms of doing the research, doing all the the prep work, putting it together, etc. And in this day and age, most people, Ryan, I think most people these days get their news from Twitter. So you're getting live tweets.
Number one, but number one.
But it's a different consumption model because mainstream media isn't competing with Joe Rogan, right? Mainstream media is competing with Twitter. They're competing with the guy sitting at his desk live tweeting whatever. News media is not competing with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is in a completely he is, hey, if you want to listen to this one guest or this one topic for 3 hours, go over here. And there's tons of consumption over there, but those are not, they're not the same eyeballs that Fox is trying to get, or that or right.
I agree, but let me ask you this. Okay, so if Rogan tomorrow, just tell me if you agree. I'm gonna go through a bunch of different things. If Rogan tomorrow announced he was going to keep his main show, so that's going to stay the same, but he's also going to start doing 1 hour, twice a week shows on true crime, it would be wild, and he's going to bring in experts to talk about true crime. It would be wildly successful, right?
Yes.
Okay, if he was going to do a 1 hour show 3 times a week on sports, football, basketball, MMA, it'd be wildly successful.
Yes, but because of his cachet, his style,
exactly.
and his
right.
but yes,
right,
yes,
right, agreed. Okay, and so the further you go down that chain, someone like Rogan, because he has distribution, he has the ability to say, "I'm doing this, therefore go watch it," and people go watch it. My point is, Fox News, they have that same or MSNBC or CNN, they have that same ability to say, "Hey, here is this platform, go watch this," and they can run ads on their TV network. They can push their viewers to it. They can push their people to those platforms. There's got to be some overlap there.
But ostensibly, and I don't know this, I'm not saying that this is factual. Check me on this if you don't agree, Ryan. But I would venture to say, or for the sake of this conversation, that Joe Rogan doesn't have a dog in most of the fights on his podcast. Meaning that if he has a guest that's far right, far left, in the middle, climate alarmist, climate denier, like whatever, he doesn't care as the guest, right? He is looking for good content, looking for engaging conversation, looking for intelligent nuance, etc. That, again, that's not the mainstream media. They're looking for a very slim narrative. They're looking for someone that wants to say this one thing, and that's why you see the same talking heads. Sorry for the pun. The same talking heads, on the talking circuit, on these shows, on the mainstream media, because Fox News, when they have XY, when they have Rudy Giuliani on the podcast, they know what they're going to get. When you have when you have a commentator on the podcast, or on the show, you know what you're going to get. There's not an X factor of what's this guy going to say. And I think that's an important piece.
I think now you're getting there. Is that the type of sponsors they're trying to attract want a more controlled narrative. And I won't say the name of the publication. I'll tell you offline. I won't say it online. I reached out to someone to have them on talk about their book, and it's a major news publication, and they said we can't because of our the people we work for don't let us do interviews on podcasts. And I know someone else who works there, and they've told me the same thing. Anyways, and so I was like, that's crazy, but here's the thing: if you come on my podcast and we're talking about whatever topic, I can ask you whatever I want, right? There's no one's stopping me here. There's no man behind the curtain who's going to pull the club. You would have to leave. It'd look awkward. And so that's, I think, to your point, that's what they don't want. Most of their hosts are not very talented outside of they can talk very clearly, which I can't do. They can, here, if you watch them, they all look the same. Tonight at 6, Ben Samuels comes to talk about the Red Sox. Back to you,
well,
and they're great at that. You bring Brian Stelter on this podcast with me and you, we would embarrass him. We would embarrass him. He wouldn't last 30 seconds.
We'd run laps around him because there's no teleprompter. He doesn't have a production assistant telling him what to say.
Well, that and his little smug, all that bull he does, it wouldn't work because we'd be like, "You're not going to answer. Oh, you're not going to answer. You don't have anything to say." And so I think to your point, you nailed it a minute ago, which is they want to be able to set the Overton window of the opinions that they want. And then kind of force everything through there. So if it's CNN, you have one Republican who's kind of a moderate Republican, 4 Democrats. You bring on the Republican, the 4 Democrats pound on him or her, and then vice versa for Fox News, right? And so that's kind of the model. Whereas here, to your point, my wife helps me book podcast guests, and so we're going through looking for guests and stuff. And she goes, "What do you think about this person?" I'm like, I don't really care. I mean, I have my own opinions. I have my beliefs on politics, philosophy, religion, business, but I don't really care for the podcast. I want interesting content. I want the people who are willing to have conversations about things, and they're not going to get all upset and cry. And I'm not rude to my guests, so come and talk. I don't think you're interested in that.
So I'm curious, taking a slight tangent, how do you go about sort of or at all, kind of prepping the podcast guest for, hey, listen, I'd love to have a conversation, but I'm not looking for just canned answers here. I want, do you ask something along the lines of like, are you willing to really, engage here, or are you just going to give me, the standard talking points? Or do you do any of that, or is it just,
I try not to say anything to the guests other than I want to talk about maybe you have a book. So we had Carole Baskin on. I just said I want to have you on the podcast, and she said great. I have on a guest coming on Monday who's got a book coming out. So we're talking about his book on Monday, right? So I'm going, because he's coming on for the book, I'm going to stay within the bounds of the book. Now the book's about China, so I might ask some more overarching questions about China, but I'm not going to say, what do you think about the 2020 election or January 6th? Like that's not the purpose of this interview, right? And so some of the bounds are kind of established by the topic. And then the other thing is, and I've heard this from people, this isn't give myself an attaboy. It just may be my ignorance, but I've heard this from people who have been interviewed by kind of the top talking heads, and they say that the questions that I ask just aren't the ones that they're used to. And so I think that kind of works as well, not asking these standardized questions.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing, and I've got that feedback as well on some of the shows that I've haven't had nearly the range of guests that you have, but yeah, that's common feedback that it's just sort of fresh, refreshing to not have the exact same answers. And I bet I'm sure going back to Carole, I bet you would have the same reaction. I don't think that we asked a lot. Actually there are a couple of questions that we asked that she didn't have answers right off the bat for that she had to kind of think about, which.
Yeah, and so like yesterday, you take Carole. I never would have thought we'd have gotten into petting tigers and the pros and cons of that. Like that wasn't on the agenda. But then she started talking about the cameras. It's like, okay, that's interesting. And then my question, I think I asked her, was something along the lines of, well, okay, let's take the last 200 years of zoos and stuff. Part of that was because we want to be dominant over the animals. Okay. Also, part of that is we're trying to observe them. We're trying to learn from them. But now with new technology, maybe that will diminish some. And I would have never thought about that too much until she would have said all the things that she said. So it's hard to prepare for that question unless you've read them say something directly that makes you think about that. And so I like to just try to respond to what they're saying or things I've read from them. And so if it's an author, obviously I have things in the book I'm going to go from. But if it's like with Carole, you're just shooting from the hip. I'm genuinely curious about what she's saying. I think that's the thing. You have to be curious about what your guest is talking about.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You have to. What's the word, Ryan? Hold on, wait for it. What's the word? You have to prepare for that. No, that's not the word. No, that's
curious.
What were you? Sorry, what were you saying? Sorry.
Curious. Yes, curious is the word you're looking for.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh, can we get Brian Stelter on the podcast? That would make my day. Like after dismantling that man, I would retire. Like that. I'll take him. I'll take Don. I'll take Hannity. I'll take them all the big names at one time. I'll take them all.
Oh man,
there's a reason they don't do interviews.
Right. Oh, absolutely. There's a reason they're on one side of the camera, not the other, or one side of the desk, not the other. For sure.
So here's a question for you. Is Bill Maher going to become the voice of reason in America?
Oh God, I hope not. Oh Lord. If that's not an indicator for the walls just falling apart, yeah. Do you think he is?
I think he's finding himself in an interesting spot. So you have, if you just take two labels, conservative and progressive, both labels have fundamental problems with what they are, which is progressive, there is no end to where you're going. And conservative, you're not exactly sure to what end you're conserving, right? So neither, I mean, right? Neither
yeah,
end.
No, yeah.
And so if you consider yourself a progressive, there will come a day you're like, whoa, that's too far. That's too far. And if you're conservative, you're like, well, we were conserving this and now we're not. So what happened there? So I think both of those groups, and you've seen the conservative movement shift over the past decade for sure, the progressives as well. So I think Bill Maher, a lifelong Democrat, I think he's kind of struggling with, where does he fit in now? Because the far reaches of the left are way crazier than he wants to be. And the right actually has more home for him now, it seems. And so he's it's weird just kind of hearing some of his recent comments. And um, it's good because you kind of have someone on the left kind of balancing out what they're saying. But I don't know. It's just weird that, when he's being shared by right-wing pundits, that the left is like really out to pasture.
I don't know if this is pertinent, but I heard recently that apparently people have started to talk about Candace Owens being one of the more moderate right-wing voices in the room, and I thought that was an absurd take. Do you follow her work?
Not until she flares up for something big. So all I know of is like the random controversies, and I don't really follow those very closely. So, but see, that's a great example. And this is, I used to be conservative. Now I'm a libertarian. Air quotes for being there.
Thank you.
But I used to be conservative, and I'm not anymore because I don't think the conservatives actually know what they're trying to conserve.
Well, no, but I mean, so what is when you hear someone say, in 2021, I'm a conservative, what does that even mean?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know what it means anymore. It doesn't mean anything.
But if you're a progressive, what does that mean? Like I find it so interesting that we live in a world where like most of the people that sort of seem to control public discourse and conversation are very adamant that we shouldn't be using labels, and most labels are like racist or demeaning or like any of these like things. But then like if you say something negative against Biden, you're automatically a Republican. If you say something negative against Trump, you're automatically a Democrat. Like we're all about labels, and so like I don't understand. And then like again, if you go to the labels, like what are they even talking about? So if somebody calls you like a Republican, I don't even know what that means anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't either. So this goes back to, at least the Bush years, the W-43 Bush years, but maybe even further. If you look at the Republican Party and the conservatives, there was always this debate over a rhino. Who's a rhino? Well, listen, by historic conservative standards, Trump is basically a rhino, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And so if you're a conservative and you want to vote for Trump, that's fine, but don't make fun of the rhinos because you're openly endorsing a rhino. Like, now he did some conservative things. I'm not arguing against that, but so to your point, it's like, well, conservatives, what are you trying to conserve? And when Ryan Gradowski came on the podcast, and his point was essentially that you should vote for whomever you think will wield the power in your way. So he's saying that the left is going to wield power and they're going to break boundaries. It doesn't matter. So if you get your person in, if Trump's breaking the law or pushing presidential precedent or whatever, then go ahead and vote for him. And I get why he says that. It's just that's why we're in the problem we are today. So if we never stop the cycle, it eventually ends far worse than any of us want to imagine. And so I don't. So it's like, well, and then at the same time, and this is Gradowski's word, I'm not making fun of him. He argues quite vehemently that Kushner, a progressive Democrat, was running the White House. That's what he says.
Right.
Kushner. So it's like, so you're voting. So he gets mad at me for not voting for Trump. Oh, by the way, he's telling me that a progressive Democrat is running the White House. What sense does that make?
I mean, I don't buy that from any like of the policy decisions or any of like the rhetoric coming from the White House at the time. But I mean, I've heard that too. But like based on everything that you saw from the White House, like I don't understand that narrative thread. Do you?
Okay, I think Gradowski believes it. He seems to run in the circles to know.
No, but I'm saying like a sense of like. What time frame was he talking about? Like the entirety of the presidency? And if so, like that's a crock of something. Because I mean, if you look at what the White House said, did, etc., like none of it was progressive. I mean, right?
Yeah, go listen to the podcast. Come on, man. Come on, go listen to the podcast. Killing me. No,
does he actually make some good points?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. He's on my show. All my guests do. All my guests do.
Well, other than this one.
Well, up to this point they have. But anyways,
you said you were supposed to be nice.
You're making great points. You're making great points.
Thank you.
But anyways, Grodowski, listen, here's what I would say. Grodowski's an insider, I believe. He should know if he's saying it and he's chastising me for voting for Trump, then it's a weird argument for him to make, which is you should have voted for this guy because he's the best guy, and then he undermines his own candidate by his own candidate's incompetency. Like it's just a weird take, Like it's just so. I mean, he could be wrong, but I think he believes it. Otherwise, he's going against what he told me. Like going against the whole "you should have voted for Trump" narrative. Like,
right.
So I think he believes it, if nothing else.
Okay, go listen to the podcast.
You go listen to the podcast. I was there.
Well, no, I'm telling the guests that are listening to this. I'm telling the thousands of listeners to go listen, go download it. It's three before this one.
Ben won't do it. It's episode 45. Episode 45. This is 51, I think. So it's episode 45.
51. That's aggressive. 51. When did you start counting? Because this is like podcast 7,012 for you, like lifetime.
Knocking on like 600, I think. Knocking on close to 600.
Are you gonna you should put like together like a discography of all of them.
That's a big word. That's aggressive. I don't know what that means. But back to Bill Maher, like where we got, and you get me on Trump. I mean, I know you watch the show weekly, so that's why I was asking you. Do you think he's the voice of reason?
No, it's interesting you say that because I'm trying to remember. I don't think that I've ever watched any of Bill Maher's show. I've certainly seen it like in clips on YouTube or Twitter, like whatever. But I don't think I've ever tuned into the show.
About a decade. Oh yeah, about I said a decade ago. And I realized it's been at least 16, 17 years, maybe. So almost 2 decades ago now. Sorry, that got aggressive pretty fast. When I was working out of town, you'd have HBO on the hotel TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would watch him on there. That was my first exposure to him. And you'd watch his stuff, and you'd say, okay, so this would have been during the Bush years. Some of the stuff he says is good. Some of the stuff he says is crazy. And I hate comedians talking politics. We can talk about that in a second. But and so I thought, a lot of stuff he says is stupid, but he does make some good points from time to time. And so I haven't watched him since then because I don't have HBO, so I'll see him on YouTube and clips like you're saying. So I don't watch him consistently.
Mm-hmm.
I do have I'm curious your thoughts about this. I do have a problem with comedians talking politics because it feels like when they get pinned down, they go to jokes. Like they don't really answer. Like when Bill Maher gets pinned down, he just kind of makes a joke. It's like, well, hold on.
Right.
That's like I can't stand that. It drives me crazy.
I mean, what do you expect?
I expect him to answer the question or to take the L.
Based on what set of evidence?
No. Yeah, there's no evidence. I said what I expect, what I hope for, what I dream for.
Well, yeah, we can all have dreams, Ryan.
Let me dream, Ben. Let me dream. Why are you the way that you are? I'm just like, I feel like I'm the only person who, I'm not the only person. I feel like I'm one of the few people who gets annoyed by the comedians because I like comedians. They're fine. But when they start talking politics and they get pinned down, they just make a joke. Everyone laughs. And you're like, actually, the comedian just got dunked on. But because he made everyone laugh, we feel like.
Have you ever noticed that? I mean, this is sort of what you're saying, but sort of not. You ever noticed that comedians can say things that are just like patently not funny at all? Not even like during a set, just like a comedian will say something in an interview, or whatever, that's not funny at all, and like they get like raucous laughter. Like it's sort of the conditioning of the interaction as opposed to the actual like delivery of the content or the content itself, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're expecting them to be funny, so like you're saying, you're kind of conditioned. You're expecting them to make a joke or. And the other thing is, public pressure, man. You're in a crowd and someone starts laughing and you don't laugh. You feel awkward, even if you don't get the joke, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's part of it.
No, yeah, it's very much that like group think. I mean, yeah, it's the same thing if you're like sitting in a comedy club and you're at a set and the comedian says something that you don't think is funny at all, but like the entire room is dying laughing. Like you're probably going to start laughing. I mean, it's the same.
Confession: I've never been to a comedy club.
You what? Who? What?
I've never been to one. I've attended a comedy show on a cruise one time, and it was okay. I've never been to a comedy club.
Good comedy shows. I mean, I've been to a number in Vegas, and good comedy shows are fantastic. We should go to an open mic comedy night and like each do a set.
Bomb. We both bomb.
Well, I mean, obviously, I didn't feel like that needed to be said.
for the listeners, just to be clear, don't show up, please. Don't show up.
No. Well, no. If you want to, like, make a video of it to like put on YouTube, make fun of us.
Kyle Sousa did an open mic night one time.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did you go? No.
No, he lives in Houston. I don't live in Houston. I just saw him posted on somewhere.
I mean, if it was in Dallas, that would have been too far.
That's too far, right? If it'd been next door, it'd probably been too far. But whatever.
Ouch. Kyle, he didn't mean that.
See, you were supposed to play into the joke there, and you didn't. You just left me hanging.
I know.
It wasn't about Kyle at all. It was just about me and but whatever. Thank you.
I know.
I know you know. But no one else
knows. I know.
So. Unbelievable. Just to be clear, when I came to Houston last time, I hung out with Kyle instead of you, just so we're on the same page.
Oh no, that's why I'm not helping you. No, I'm fully aware.
Open mic at a comedy club. So how many minutes are you going to go for? 3?
I think they're like 2-3 minute sets, something like that.
God, that's a long time.
It is. You know, actually would be entertaining. Like if I bet. So like you or I individually that would be a train wreck, I'm sure. But I bet you and I could come up with something entertaining for a couple of minutes, just like some sort of routine.
Dunking on me, like with Kyle.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, like lean into your strengths, right?
Okay, so we've got 2 challenges that we got to.
What's the first one again? We've thrown out a bunch, but
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And then
you threatened to beat me in a bit like a sales contest too. I mean, like we've thrown out a bunch, but you haven't stepped to the table once yet. So
that requires work.
Thank you.
That requires a lot of work.
Which one are we doing first?
Well, the comedy club would require me to leave the house, so that's going to be pretty low on the list.
Fair.
Right? I mean,
do you have a Chick-fil-A at your house?
No, but there's one in Granbury. I'd be willing to go to that.
Wait, there's a Chick-fil-A in Granbury?
Yes. We're not in the boonies.
Well, that's not true.
Crosby knows us, so don't be hating.
That's fair. He said something about y'all being bougie or something.
I wasn't listening, but sure. He's like, I love the lake, yada yada. No.
Yeah, he said something about a nice lake. Yeah.
Yep. So, all right, so you want to talk about the Red Sox?
What's happening?
The Red Sox.
Listen, like we're recording this September 1. I don't even really want to talk about the Red Sox. If we had recorded this like July 1 when I was excited about them and I was talking about them, but you didn't want to. You were the Debbie Downer for like the first 4 months of the season. What was that about?
Because going into this season, I thought they have no shot. I told you they had no shot. I said 50 wins would be a great year, I think is what I said, right? That sounds about right?
Yeah, and I think, if I remember right, we can play back the tape, but I think I came in at 76. I think is the number I chose.
Yeah, so they're at 75 right now. So they might – I don't know if they're going to get to 76.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's aggressive. Are they coming to Dallas or Houston for the rest of the year?
I don't know. Oh, let's see here. So there are 10 games behind the Rays, 2 behind the Stanks. They lost their last 3, and they're 500 in their last 10.
The Rays have been playing some good ball.
But let's talk about this because this bugs me. I didn't want to get my hopes up because they weren't a good team. And you kept pressuring me. And I got my hopes up. Why?
Well, when you say it like that was pretty stupid. I don't know. I was just trying to, have you join in the revelry of them doing well. But now that they're not doing well, I care less. Does that make me a bad fan?
No, that actually makes you a logical fan.
Well, okay, so I don't
So
think I don't think I've ever been called logical before, but I'll take it.
I mean, I don't know if we talk about this or not. Like, I think the fans who are the diehards who go to everything when the team's terrible, I think those people are like missing the point.
What? You're only supposed to be a fan when they're doing well?
Okay. Oh, well, depends on the term fan. So if you want to go to every game and your team's 0-16, whatever, I'm not mad at you. But what I'm saying is, if you want the team to get better, you don't go to the games. Like that's the thing.
Oh.
That's the thing. If you
Speak with your dollars. I like it. I
Yeah,
like it.
and so, when if the Red Sox are doing good, I'll follow along and I'll watch. If they're not, I tune out. I don't need to watch them get drummed by the Rays every night. I don't. But
Who was it this week? I'm trying to pull it up. I don't remember. There was some baseball player this week that he hit a home run and I think it was in a win. And as he was like crossing home plate, he gave the crowd like two thumbs down because a couple nights before they had, I think they had blown a lead in the ninth, and the fans were booing like crazy. And after the game, he said something to the effect of, if the fans are booing us when we're not doing well, then we're going to boo them when we are. And I thought that was like one of the stupider things that I've heard an athlete say in a really long time. I forget what it was. Let me see.
okay, I'll circle back around to that. But my larger point is just the teams that I follow. I care about them when they're doing good. When they're not doing good, it's not that I don't care. I just can't invest the time. Like if take the Saints. So let's say the Saints start off 0-5 this year. Well, I'm not going to waste my Sunday afternoons trying to hunt down the Saints playing when they're not going to make the playoffs. Like, it doesn't. Why? They're
Right.
not going to make the play. I can watch other teams play or not watch it at all or whatever. Now, if it's on, I have nothing to do. Then I'll maybe I'll turn it on. But I'm not going to go out of my way to do something. Now, the rare occasion would be is if the Saints come play the Cowboys. And we could go because the Saints don't come to town very often. I might go do that even if they're a bad team because that's a chance to go see them. And I do the same for the Red Sox. But the devotion to watch it day in, day out, following them, all that stuff. If they're not doing any good, it doesn't matter. They're gonna. I'm not a Red Sox reporter. I'm not a historian. And so that's my take. As far as the player thing, I think. Go ahead.
So I was just, before you launch into it. So it was Javi Baez, who's on the Mets.
Oh, yeah.
They were playing what?
It's Javi Baez. So come on.
I didn't say. I didn't. It's he's on the Mets. They were playing well. They've recently been on a 9-20 skid in their last 29, going from first place in the NL East to third. And here's the quote:
9-20, just to be clear.
9-20 in their last 29. That's correct. And so he hit a home run in a 9-4 win. And as he's crossing the plate, he gives like a two thumbs down. The quote is after the game, he says, "We're not machines. We're going to struggle 7 times out of 10. It just feels bad when I strike out and get booed. It doesn't really get to me, but I want to let them know that when we're successful, we're going to do the same thing to let them know how it feels. If we win together, then we got to lose together. And the fans are a really big part of it. In my case, they got to be better. I play for the fans and I love the fans, but if they're going to do that, they're just putting more pressure on the team, and that's not what we want." Actually, I'm going to reserve comment. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
How long we got? I think the modern athlete has to understand. Javi Baez is not he's not a superstar, but he's a known name commodity, right? I won't say he's a superstar, but he's a name commodity. He's a name.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So okay, so if you're a name to superstar, I think you have to kind of fall into a couple of camps and then live that role. So if you go back to like Chael Sonnen, His whole deal was he was the bad guy. So he played that whole gimmick. I'm the bad guy. When he's on brand. He's being interviewed on brand. He's always the bad guy. Like that's his deal. Okay, that's fine. That's his deal. He's the bad guy. And if you are a naturally rude person, then that's probably the role for you. Chill, I think, is a pretty good dude. But anyways, then you have kind of the Derek Jeter model, which is you never say anything. You're like it's empty platitudes galore. I think if you want to be the athlete who's real and raw, you have to be careful how that comes across because how much time is Javi Baez thanking the fans when they win?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So when he hits a walk-off home run, by his quote there, is he going to sit around and just sign autographs all night because they helped him win? Right. And so I think if you want to be real and raw, that's fine, but understand that comes with the pushback, the pros, the cons, and so I'm glad they say stuff like this because I think this gives us content to talk about more than anything. But
well, I mean, it's just surprising to hear you say that because I mean, I know that your like favorite athlete of all time is LeBron James.
That was uncalled for. That was
too far. I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
Okay, I got a question for you about LeBron. I heard that this morning. They talked like, who do you think LeBron is? Like, if you got to meet him, who do you think he is?
Like, in what context?
Like, how close to the image is he? So, like, take Tiger Woods, right? Tiger Woods was buttoned up, polished up. He gets, has too many pills, gets in a wreck, and then his whole world unravels, right?
Okay. Yeah.
He's been pretty much scandal free until that moment in time. LeBron has been scandal free as far as anything of it like that. He got a speeding ticket, I think, one time, so he's been scandal free.
Right.
Do you buy that image, or do you think that is him just a great job of managing his career?
So it's an interesting question. I mean, I think that I'm a firm believer that, I mean, the powers that be, the TMZ sort of ethos and that sort of ecosystem in the world, if he were doing some things with impropriety, I think that, he's arguably one of the largest targets for, let's tear this guy down. Let's find something to pin on him. And it's actually interesting you say that because I was just reading an article yesterday talking about that he has, because keep in mind that he didn't come out of college. I mean, he came out straight out of high school,
yep.
and even as a high school athlete, he was a superstar. And to have that amount of attention throughout the entirety of the career, and really never have a blip on the radar it's something that I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for. And yeah, no, I do think I'm of the opinion that that's got to be close to on brand and who he really is. Because if it wasn't, I think that we'd find out. We'd know already. Because there's so many people in the national media and across the country that despise that man. It's not like he's the golden child, right? I mean, it's not like both sides are sort of incentivized to keep him clean. He's got a lot of enemies, and so if he had some stuff in the closet, in some skeletons, I think they'd be drug out by now.
I don't know. And it's not it's just, I've been around so many athletes, and you read so many stories of athletes, that the athletes that fall from grace, there's just so many stories. And I think I saw maybe the same thing or something similar that you did talking about LeBron. First off, let me say the most impressive thing is not what you said. And few people comment on this. It's the fact he got $90 million at 18 years old and was still able to go play basketball at a high level. Mm-hmm. If you gave me $90 million at 18 years old or whatever it was, 90, 100 million, I would have been done. That'd have been it. I'd have just taken the money. I'd have played out the shoe contract and retired. And I'm just being serious. So the respect from that level, his competitive nature is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say. So this is going in a little bit of a different direction, but I have always been incredibly kind of in awe of that dynamic where these athletes, you get a $100 million, $200 million payday, and then so let's talk about basketball for a second because we're talking about LeBron.
Sure.
Now these supermax contracts. I mean, the superstars are making. You make the math easy. They're making $40 million a year. Okay, and you sign a 4 or 5 year contract. That's 5 years of your life. So let's say that you're a 23-year-old kid. You get a 5 year Supermax contract. You're gonna leave that contract at 28. Let's ignore the fact that you already had a rookie contract, most likely, right? So this is your first major deal. So now you've got $200 million, probably not in the bank, but you've earned $200 million in 5 years.
It's guaranteed.
Right.
You're gonna get it.
So now you're on the outside. On the other side of that contract. You've earned the money. I find it fascinating that there's not more athletes that say, "All right, cool, I'm going to go start another company, do something else, make my money work for me, and just like sign off and I'm out of here." As opposed to your point, there's a lot of these NBA superstars that they'll never have to work a day in their life again. Their kids,
Right.
their grandchildren, like never. But they get in the gym at 6 a.m. every day. And like it's truly for the love of the game. And I think that's something that gets lost in translation some, because these athletes, because they make so much money, they're looked at as very spoiled and then all these things, and they're very entitled. But at the end of the day, to play in the NBA, to play in the NFL, and play the game, you have to be at the top of your game. If you're going to stay at that level, at like LeBron or KD or Russell, you got to grind, and that's not like, I understand that someone like LeBron doesn't need to do nearly the amount of work that like a Jeremy Lin does in order to be at his best, because LeBron is such an elite athlete. But it's truly remarkable that these guys have the amount of commitment that they do to the sport, given the amount of, to your point, to the wealth. Because I wouldn't, like, in that scenario, if I was that athlete, I can tell you with certainty that I'd play out the first major contract and be done, do something else. Because it's fascinating to me if these guys play 20-year careers in the current NBA. When you're like Larry Bird, you weren't making anything, right? And so you had to play out a long career. But these days, it's interesting.
I would have done exactly what you said. I would have played out the first contract. I probably would have been borderline terrible. And if someone would offer me a second contract, maybe I'd taken that. But you talk about walking away with, his shoe contract was like a $90 or $100 million. So his whatever rookie deal was. So you have, let's say after taxes, $50 million in the bank. $50 million. You don't ever have to do what you want to do for the rest of your life. And so the scandal stuff I don't know about. I just know there's so many athletes, and it's not just, this isn't a racial thing, this isn't an athlete thing, this is a celebrity thing. So many celebrities that you just find out at some point that there was so much orchestration going on. I'm kind of always skeptical of that. I think the thing that I can talk about, though, is just the fact that at 18, you're given that kind of money. Listen, I know people who get their sales bonus check and they quit working for 6 months. Not quit working, but they quit putting the reps in, right? They quit making the calls because they got a $10,000 bonus check. It's like, that's nothing. That's nothing. This guy got $100 million. I thought you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was just to say, no, I think you're right. I think it's, what was I going to say?
Real quick, it's not the same as Rogan getting $100 million. Rogan getting $100 million to come and talk to people, that's easy money. That's easy money. Right? That's easy money. Rogan just has to be good at talking to people, and he gets $100 million. I'm not saying what he does is easy. He's very talented. He makes it look easy. But just keep doing that. He doesn't have to go play 82 games or 162 games, travel, work out, take a toll on his body. He goes to a studio. Listen, Rogan's fantastic. I'm not trying to mock his work. I'm just saying it's not the same $100 million we're talking about.
Right. No, absolutely. I guess what I was thinking about before is that it kind of goes to, really what is the driver, and I just wonder at times how heavily weighted the ultra superstars, like the KDs of the world. I'm not talking about the middling guys, right? But like at that level, how much of them playing is actually pure ego driven as opposed to
a lot,
like financial driven. I wonder if it's, or is it at that point, is it, hey, I'm playing because I'm close to the record books and I want to pad the records. Because it can't, I find it unfathomable to a degree that these, nearly billionaires would be grinding it out for the paycheck. It can't be about the money, right?
No, I don't think it's about the money. Okay, well, it's hard for us to measure how much they're making off the court. So they might be making buku dollars off the court that we're not even counting. and that might incentivize them some. It's probably easy for them, easy in the sense of, it's, like something you're good at, it's easier for you to do. But the other thing is, I always tell people this: if you haven't watched Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame acceptance speech, go watch it. That is a dude who gets up there for whatever it is, 20 minutes, and just destroys people, destroys them. And he's in the hall, he's getting his Hall of Fame induction, and he's going back to his high school basketball team. They think they have a different drive, a different mentality, a different ego, a different persona. They're just different creatures than you and I are. And that's what makes them who they are. And that's why they're so fascinating. That's why all the things about them is, think about Tiger. We talk about Tiger for a second. Think about Tiger, just the dedication that dude had coming up from a young age, trying to be the best golfer in the world. I mean, he was locked in there for a long portion of his life, just like almost robotic, it seemed, just kind of how he was. And so, yeah, I think they're just different creatures.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I don't know why I thought of it when you were talking, but put up an article here that's talking about the Shaquille O'Neal's like business interest in his empire. I think he's a fascinating story from a number of different angles. For those that aren't familiar, and I actually just recently learned this story, and I don't know the years, so don't quote me on this. But so Shaq, when he came in the league, he was under a Reebok shoe deal. And he played for a number of years. And then apparently there was this game, and this woman was yelling at him as he's coming off the court after the game. It said something like, "You need to make shoes that are more affordable," or something like that. And he kind of stopped and looked at the woman and was like, "You're robbing." And she said, like, "You're robbing these kids blind," or something like that. He took out like a lot of money apparently that he had in his bag or whatever and handed it to him. And he's like, I'm sorry, here you go. I don't remember the exact exchange, but something to that degree. She threw the money back at him. Was like, nah, that's bull, whatever. He went back, into the locker room. Apparently, the very next day, called Reebok, killed his sponsorship deal, and said, "Listen, I can't do this anymore. I'm out. Keep the money. We just need to be done." Went to Walmart and said, "Hey, we need to work out a shoe deal." He worked out a shoe deal with Walmart at like a $26 price point, and that empire has made over $400 million in shoes since whenever it was put together. He also owns, what does this article say? He owns 155 Five Guys franchises, 17 Auntie Anne's, 150 car washes. I'm sure there's tons and tons more. I think I read once that he's still – go ahead.
I would say, and all of his commercials he does, he gets equity stakes in the businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Like when he does the general and stuff like that, he is an equity partner in those. So there's no telling. So anytime you see a commercial, that's him. He owns part of that business.
And he owns a number of what was it? Papa John's. I think he did that for Robinhood. So I think I'm sure he owns a part of Robinhood now. I think that that's sort of, I guess the reason I bring that up is because I was thinking about sort of, on one side you have the Shaqs who made an absolute empire, and on the other side you've got a lot of stories of like the Antoine Walkers of the world who earned, over $100 million in his career, and I think retired broke, which I find incredibly sad that, so that's actually something I've been talking to another partner on something else offline about is, what it would look like to sort of stand up an organization that was really focused on financial literacy for athletes. Because a lot of these athletes, they come from, unfortunately, a lot of them, especially in basketball, come from relatively poor backgrounds and upbringings. And to your point, for LeBron to get 80 or 100 million on a shoe deal at 18 years old, he seemed to have come up with, in at least a stable family and didn't have some of the background that some of these others. I can see some of those guys having just no idea what to do with that amount of wealth.
I wouldn't know what to do with it at 18. And I came from a pretty up and decent family, it's like,
right.
It's okay. And when we say know what to do with it, it's know what to do with it wisely. The thing is, you'd go out and buy 15 houses, 100 cars, and then Uncle Sam starts hitting you for taxes. You're like, oh wait, what happened now? No, I think the financial literacy thing for athletes part of it is there's so many people, and you see this in the fight game. There's such a big pie at the top, and if you can just get a part of that big pie, you and your family is set. So there's so many. Dana White calls them Klingons. So many people that are just clinging on, trying to get their snippet of that pie, and I think it makes a lot of pressure on the athletes, and so. And so then they turn their money over to someone else, and that someone else turns out to be not trustworthy. And then and the other thing, real quick, is they're all accredited investors, which means they actually have opportunities that most people don't have, and they probably don't realize. A lot of them probably aren't pitched on those things. I mean, think about it. All the NBA, NFL players, hockey players, baseball players are all accredited investors, which means that all these PE groups and all these funds and stuff, they have opportunities to invest to make great returns that the average guy can't. And so bridging that gap is what needs to happen, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know why that just kind of pinged me as you were talking there. I thought it's interesting that so in basketball, and I don't know, I don't have it up, so I don't know the league minimum, but I think it's about $1 million. And then you have the supermax contracts that are so they're earning $40 million, and so you likely have guys on the court at one time that one guy's earning $1 million, the next guy standing next to him is making $40 million. But if you're making $1 million, that's still a very good living. You shouldn't be complaining. That's plenty of money, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at like the MMA, the top guys make piles of money. Those guys are so actually you're going to know better. What does Conor make in a not after gate, but like as just an appearance? What does he make for being in an MMA fight? Or Derek Lewis, and what do these guys pull down?
Yeah, those guys are going to make between a quarter, depends on who they are. Let's say $100,000 to $1 million, some that kind of range in there.
So talking about the ones that kind of at the top end of the range. So like, let's say that you have somebody that's earning, so like a Dustin Poirier who's earning closer to like 700, 800,000, something like that. You have undercard fighters at these same events that are making like 20K, 10K, 12K. And like, I mean, I don't know about you. I can't fathom having a job where my job is to show up on game day and just absolutely get pummeled, and I have to spend months and months and months of painful prep work and training to get there, and the payoff is 10K a fight. I mean, is there any conversation in MMA about sort of equalizing or recalibrating the pay scale, or is that just
no? There is, but it's all we don't have time. We don't have time to get MMA pay stuff. We could do a whole episode on this. I think so to your point, let's just talk about regional MMA first. Regional MMA, no one cares about. Literally no one. Okay.
I don't even know what that means. What is
like if we put on a show out at Midland, at the Midland, there's probably some group out there in Midland that puts on shows, right? No one cares about it except for the people who know people fighting, right? Mm-hmm. And if you go back and listen to my episode with Ed Lattimore, professional boxer, we talk about this some. No one cares. And so, if Ben Samuels is fighting, maybe Ben sells 100 tickets. Maybe he sells 100 tickets. Okay. And so that's if Ben's really popular, he's going to sell 100 tickets. So Ben Samuels is the best fighter out in Midland. He might sell 100 tickets. He's so good, though, the UFC goes, this guy might have something. We're going to call him up. Now they bring him to the UFC. Now he's not fighting in Midland. Now he's fighting in, let's say they're going to put him on a card in New York. Is Ben going to sell 100 tickets? No, he might sell 5 or 10. Mm-hmm. He's getting paid $10,000. He brings no value. No one's watching him. No one cares. No one's showing up to see Ben Samuels but 10 people. He get paid 10 G's. Now, from that perspective, Ben Samuels just got the deal of his life. From the perspective that you laid out, he's getting shafted. And I think that's the conversation that has to be had, is that the fighters don't listen, and I'm not trying to be rude. They just don't bring the value that they think. The UFC is the value. Conor's the value. John Jones is the value. Now, if we talk about those guys getting underpaid, that's a discussion to have. But the guy getting paid 10 and 10 or 20 and 20, they just don't bring the value, unfortunately. If they did, they'd get paid more. I'll give you a couple examples. CM Punk came over from wrestling to MMA. I don't remember what he got paid, but it was a lot more than 10 and 10. because he brought value. Brock Lesnar, he brought value. Value is eyeballs, tickets, pay-per-views, things like that. So an up-and-coming fighter, they just don't have much value because if you replace Ben Samuels with Ryan Ray on the 4th fight of the night out of 15, no one cares. And that's the reality.
Yeah, no, all great points, but I think the counter argument to that to a degree is, okay, so let's make the math easy. Let's say that Connor's on the card, he's on the main card, and he's going to earn $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if he wins, he earns a $500,000 fight bonus.
Okay. Sure.
The guy on the bottom card, he's going to make $10K for showing up and another $5K.
It'd be 10 and 10.
10. All right. Another 10 if he wins. Okay. If Connor makes $950 and $450, okay, like it's $100K less, but $950 and $450 is still 1.4 for the night. That's a good payday. The difference between 1.4 and 1.5 is
sure
substantive but negligible. If you take that $100K and you allocate that down to, let's say you allocate that down to the bottom 2 fights, and so there's $50K per fight. You've now more than you've 2.5x the purse on both those fights. And so now, I mean, and if you were to do that,
value though, no one cares. That's my point.
But if I think the point that I'm trying to make is. It's because I don't disagree with that, but I think the other side of that is if the structure were allocated, or if the system were allocating more of the money to the bottom, those fighters might have a better shot at being in a better camp with a better trainer and climbing the ranks because they have better resources and they would start to attract eyeballs because of the trajectory, as opposed to having to rely on sponsors to eat or right. And so I'm not saying that it's. To your point, it's not a dollars for dollars makes sense move, but if you're looking to improve the ecosystem of the sport as a collective, I strongly believe it would.
Okay, we got to wrap up here. There's a lot to be said, but a couple things. One, you talk about making money and not being incentivized. Fighting is one of the businesses where you make money, you're very less incentivized, right? Because you're actually getting, LeBron's going and dunking on fools. They're not slapping him in the face and trying to break his neck, okay? Like, it's a completely different sport. And so when you start making that top dollar, it is hard to be incentivized. Go look at Conor McGregor's fights over the past couple of years. He doesn't fight very often. He's got a ton of money. So there's that one side to consider. The other thing is, Conor would have to take less money in that scenario. So if Conor said, hey, I'm going to take 100 G's less, spread out under the undercard, I don't know what the UFC would say. I think they would go for that. But Conor doesn't want it. And so that's the thing is that, because Conor was making 5 and 5 and 10 and 10. Mm-hmm. And so when you for the top perspective, you're sitting there. And if you're Conor, you're like, okay, Ben, I know you're making 10 and 10, bro. I made that when I was coming up, but no one's here to see you. And I think, and a couple of things about the UFC particularly, the UFC has performance enhancing centers, so you can go train there if you're a UFC fighter. That's free access to all kinds of stuff that you don't get. They will, deal with the bare knuckle guys. Your ability to get sponsors, your ability to get your name out there by being on the UFC, you're getting a huge value by being on a UFC card because now everyone knows who you are potentially. And then if you win, you can make 50 more K. So the upside, so the UFC's perspective, I think, is that you're getting access to this huge platform. There's your upside. All you have to do is win. Now, I don't know how all camps are, but I think most coaches charge a percentage of the fee. So if you're making 10 and 10 or 100 and 100, it's that same 10 or 20 or 30% or whatever it is. So they're going to get paid a percentage of your purse regardless. And so for small, and if you watch like Greg Jackson or some of the top coaches, I'm trying to think who they are now. Anyways, they'll be on the undercard with Bob that no one knows, and they'll be later on with someone knows. So I think that kind of some of that you do see there's a more equity there. Okay, I gotta go. I know you gotta go. The Y Drive podcast has just started. Is it a podcast yet? Is it on YouTube? Where can people find it? So we link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm not a pro at this. I'm not a talking head yet, so I'm going to try to do a promo of some of the things I've got going on. Y Drive Podcast is a podcast, not yet, but the first episode will be released next week. Also have Coffee and Liquidity that as of last week is a podcast now. We'll be releasing the first episode. Today is September 1st. We're releasing the first episode tomorrow, Thursday, September 2nd. So go ahead and check that out. Ryan and I, you and I have the Don't Let the Facts every Thursday. And what else? Oh, I have a couple other shows in process, but those we can talk about on Don't Let the Facts next time. I appreciate you coming. You're letting me come on. You said that I asked to come on. I think you invited me. One of those. But either way, I think we got through it. This was one of the more tame ones. For the most part, you were pretty nice, so I appreciate it.
You are the guest, so I will give you that last word. Listeners, with that, we'll be back next time. A couple of China podcasts next week coming up, or a week. I can't remember the schedule, but we can have. So talk to you then.